this morning, but without it, we have no board here.
It was a long agenda.
You want to grab Ben's mic and turn it off so we're
Yeah.
not feedback through it?
247 pages or something like that?
Good morning. The committee will come to order. Will commissioner, staff, and guests please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we go any farther, is our video online this week, Michael?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Just remind everybody to speak into the mics. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the committee may do so for up to 3 minutes. All righty, hearing none. Here to present our first item is Mr. McManus. The board, or the chair, would recommend a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Michigan Department of Agriculture Farmland and Open Space Preservation Program application, more commonly known as PA 116, number 19-10, for Reagan and Alice Chase in Section 33 of Woodland Township.
So moved. Support.
Moved by Smelker, support by Gibson. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so the Planning Commission reviewed this. This was a fairly easy one to process. It is both planned and zoned agricultural, and the Chases own a number of properties out in that area that are already included in PA 116, so they recommended that it be approved.
Any questions for Mr. McManus? Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Michigan Department of Agriculture, Farmland and Open Space Preservation Program application, more commonly known as PA 116, 19-10, for Reagan and Alice Chase in Section 33 of Woodland Township. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Drain Commissioner Dove.
Yeah, is there any way we can?
Sure. Tammy, are you ready to go? Sure. Thank you, ma'am. The question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of fiscal year 2020 grant contract amendments to both adult drug court and sobriety court to allow the acceptance of an additional $8,000 in grant funding for each program and authorization for Berry County Trial Court Administrator Inez Straub to electronically sign the grant contracts amendments on behalf of the county and approval of the attached budget amendments for the Swift and Sure Sanctions Program, 56B Sobriety Court, Community Corrections, and Adult Drug Court.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Gibson, support by Smoker. The floor is yours.
Good morning.
Questions for Tammy? I mean, the state's going to send me extra $8,000. I'm not going to
I know.
say no.
I come bearing good news today. It's actually $16,000. It's $8,000 for drug court and $8,000 for sobriety court.
Well, hot dog.
Makes us twice as happy.
That's right.
Any questions? All righty.
Sign it.
Hearing none. The question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of fiscal year 2020 grant contract amendments to both adult drug court and sobriety court to allow for the acceptance of an additional $8,000 in grant funding for each program and authorization for Berry County Trial Court Administrator Inez Straub to electronically sign the grant contracts amendments on behalf of the county and approval of the attached budget amendments for Swift and Sure Sanctions Program and 56B Sobriety Court, Community Corrections, and Adult Drug Court. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Should that be 16,000 now?
No, it says each in there
Okay.
for each program.
Okay, all right.
All those opposed, say nay. Item is approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Inez, it's your turn, because Doug's not here yet.
Doug's here.
Oh, is he?
Brian's not here, but
Oh, sorry about that. I'll wait for Brian. The question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reclassify one of the Family Division Court Service Specialist 1 positions, grade level 5, on the BCCEA pay scale to a Chief Court Specialist 1 position, grade 7, on the BCCEA pay scale, as described in the attached job description, effective 3/2/2020.
Support.
Second.
Moved by Gibson, support by Smelker.
Here you go.
The floor is yours.
Good morning. So this is a first for me to come in and ask for a reclassification of a position. But for the last 7 months, we had a vacancy. Our financial specialist decided not to return from maternity leave. So we took the opportunity to evaluate the office and determine whether there were some areas that needed improving, how we could pass along shift responsibilities to other employees, and whether we were going to fill that position. We reassigned some of the more complex tasks to our financial specialist, Beth Dean, who's located in the district court office. Basically, Beth has been assigned the child care fund reimbursement portion of the financial components of family division. And Rebecca proudly has been reassigned the rest of the duties. So that's basically keeping track of all of the accounting procedures and financial controls and record keeping. So she's basically our bookkeeper for family court. We've kind of tested this out for the last 7 months. By the time, if it gets approved, implemented, it'll be close to 8 months. And we've decided that this is probably the best course for us. We've always kind of visioned having a financial office for the court, and that kind of moves us closer to that step, having Beth being in charge of the majority of the oversight, and then having an assistant, that being this position. The position will still remain in family court, and those two will assist one another. So the way that we envision it is when Beth's gone on vacation, then Rebecca would be able to assist her in processing vouchers just to keep the workflow continuing and going smoothly. So, I think Rebecca's been doing a fantastic job the last 8 months. The contract required, or the bargaining agreement requires that an employee, if they move up a classification, that they start no more than 5% of their pay scale, which is the request for a grade 7 at a 3-year, even though she's been doing it it'll be a year and little under or little over 4 months. So the bargaining agreement really doesn't allow us to move her up to a 4-year, grade 7 4-year, but I think she really deserves it. She's been wonderful and cooperative with us in terms of trying this out to see if that's a really good fit for the office, to see if that was a position we needed to fill instead of requesting a classification. But I understand the bargaining agreement, and I understand that there's really not a whole lot of leeway for us to ask for a 4-year. I don't really have anything else unless you have some questions and you would like additional clarification on why we're pursuing this.
Any questions for Inez?
Just a comment, that's quite a job description. That's a lot of responsibility,
It is.
as long as you feel comfortable.
Any other questions? Have anything, Michael? Okay. Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reclassify one of the Family Division Court Service Specialist 1 positions, grade level 5, on the BCCEA pay scale to a Chief Court Specialist 1 position, grade level 7 on a BCCEA pay scale as described in the attached job description, effective March 2nd, 2020. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? The item is approved. See you next week.
Thank you.
All righty.
I'm here.
All right, the question before the committee this morning is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 20-9, resolution to initiate lake level project for Cloverdale Lake, Wilkinson Lake, Jones Lake, and Mud Lake.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Jackson, support by Gibson. The floor is yours. Go ahead, sir.
As we explained a couple weeks ago, this will benefit us big on getting our permit for Cloverdale and Long Lake. DEQ is really pushing us hard to, when we get all said and done with the project, have lake structures that are not adjustable. They'll be padlocked or whatever so that everybody has a constant level. Brought Doug along because if there's any questions on the court action, he's the one that can tell you.
Yeah, after the, if and when you pass the resolution, we have to begin a court action. We give everybody on the, we publish notice of the court action 3 times in successive weeks. We provide notice to everybody on the lake. The court then provides a hearing, an opportunity for anybody who is interested to be heard on whether, what the lake level should be. The court will ultimately determine that, and within 60 days after that, the court will confirm a special assessment district to offset the costs.
Any questions? Yes.
I believe you answered this a week or so ago, but this is charged back to the people right on the lake or the whole district?
This will be a separate district. It's a lake level assessment district. It's probably it's all within, it would be within the drainage district. That's a different project. This one is to maintain whether there's a dam or whatever water level structure, that's what they pay for, and the legal cost of the proceeding or setting the level.
And has this district been set up?
No, it's not yet, but there will be a recommendation by the engineers about who benefits from the project, and it will be clearly the riparian owners. We've done other ones, but for example, Gun Lake, there was a couple stores that were within the district that were across the street and probably benefited from the level, stuff like that. But it's definitely going to be primarily the riparian owner, the lakefront owners.
And then whoever probably has lake access next.
And lake access.
A different level.
Yeah.
If you got deeded access, you'll be in it. If you're right on the lake, you'll be in it. And like Doug said, if you got a fishing store there that's gonna gain by having a lake level for recreational, then they'll be in there too. So I believe Gun Lake was anything within, any commercial entity within 500 feet of the lake?
Yeah, we did
Can't
have some.
remember. Yeah, because we had like Gillette's bait and tackle and things like that were caught on that.
Okay. Any other questions, Dan?
Yeah, does the attorney fees, are those covered by the assessments too then?
Yes.
Because it says no funding required here, so.
The entire cost is assumed by the specialist.
Okay.
Everything. There's, attorney fees, bonding, interest, what else? Construction, if there is any,
Yeah,
of a dam. I don't know if we're building a dam, but,
well, that's the thing, the structures are already in there for the
Okay.
drain.
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Any other questions?
A
Harry?
couple questions.
Okay.
Looking at the assessment district, I know that, and having conversations with the board from Chain of Lakes, that they're putting a weed assessment district together. The numbers you're showing looks like it's probably a total properties versus, like, for Long Lake, I'll give you an example. I think we have just over 200 people in the weed assessment district, but they had like 360 properties referenced on there. So that'll skew the numbers a little bit. But as long as their board will have some input as to that assessment district, because they've really already created assessment districts for both lakes.
All for the weed assessment?
Definitely. That was the starting point for Gun Lake. The Lake Improvement Special Assessment District was probably identical to what we use for the
Basically, that's,
the lake level district. So it's going to be, they'll all have notice too, and have their day if they want in court, whether they're in or out.
but yeah, basically, Gun Lake, we cheated and we just said, why reinvent the wheel? We had a special assessment district for weeds and Gun Lake improvement. and we took that one and, you know, there was a little bit of tweaking to it, but other than that, that's about where we ended up.
Okay, so those assessment districts are already set up if you want to use that information.
Perfect.
Or get together with them. Hopefully that saves us some time and money. And Doug, on the legal fee side, where do you arrive at a flat number of 20,000, or is that,
That's a best guess. I'm, and hopefully we can take these two lake level projects and get some, economies of scale and have hearings, you know, back to back on them. And it's just based on other lake level projects that we've done, you know. If there's challenges, it could be more. So, could be less if it goes smoothly. It's my best guess.
okay. So there's a chance if you can put both of these on the same docket, or separate dockets, but at the same time, we can save some costs and,
That's what I was thinking, is have the hearings in the same day if possible.
okay.
Yeah.
And in reading through this, Jim or Brian, it talks about that if the board approves this today, this is not an instant action. You're not going down to the court to apply for a lake level. This is something that it sounds like we're going to go through and evaluate this throughout the course of the summer, allow for input for lake residents to go through this. At least this is what it says in the document.
Yep, we want to put a, basically, since we've already done the work essentially on to arrive at where that top elevation may need to be, like the high elevation, pretty much know where that is at. We want to set markers, get public input basically. That's one of the items you have to do in the preliminary study is get input in regards to the proposed elevation.
So that public input will last throughout the summer?
Yeah, like we'll send out correspondence to the people on the lake, basically. The way I've done in the past is set markers and then either give a number or a email that they can send it and say, like, this is perfect or this is a little too high for my property, like it's, you know, on the water's up on my beach or whatever, you know. So, you're never gonna get everyone all to agree, but you can see what elevation people can end up living with if you after a while.
Okay.
I think we're pretty close, honestly.
Yeah. Well, just like last summer, we started out high, but by the end of the summer, most of the lakes in the area were down somewhere between 9 inches and over a foot of water, based on it was a hot, dry summer for evaporation. So I know Jim got some feedback on Chain of Lakes on the fact that if you keep pumping water out, it's gonna be too low.
Exactly.
So,
We got an idea when we started getting calls,
Yep.
when that elevation was, or where it was at, when those people said, hey, it's getting too low for us right now, and you kind of know where all that's at.
well, I know those lake boards want to be involved in the process, and it would be nice to go through, depending on, the timeline, if they can go through an entire summer and give input back into that before they establish the final level, although I agree with you, we probably pretty much know where that's set. When will you be noticing residents of the lake that they have an opportunity to put input in? Will that be May, June?
You could do it, I mean, that would be more of an informal notice, so you could do it anytime, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was thinking
that's
sometime
not,
in May. Yeah.
I would say a non-statutory notice. There is a little tension there because we don't want to let it drag out too long because we're gonna, as we're doing other work, we're gonna impact riparian rights. So we could start the court process, but set the hearing down past the summer so that people have an opportunity for input.
Okay. And is it fair to assume, I think per our conversation with Jim, that we don't know where the assessment would be back? We have an estimate, but those assessments can be spread out over 5 years?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, would that be at the request of a lake association board or at an individual? How does that work?
Basically, what we, like on drain project, we try to figure out what people basically can afford.
It's up to the delegated authority, and then they can borrow the same way they do, or, spread them over the same number of years as you can in the code. So, you know, it could be 10 years, it could be 5, it depends. Depends what's affordable, and which you don't want to spread it out too far if it's only, you know, a couple $100 a parcel or something like that. So-
Okay, but 5 years would be reasonable.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And basically, it's feedback from people. You know, if they come in and say, hey, you know, I can't afford another $75, okay, well, maybe we bump it down to $50 a year or something like that. The only difference is the amount of, I mean, if you go out too far and you're borrowing, then you start changing your interest rate.
You're paying interest. which is,
Most of these lakes already have assessments for other things like weeds or other things like that. That's why I think we just need to be mindful of what's actually going out of the pocketbook there.
Yep, when we
Okay.
did the Gun Lake Dam, we split that out over 2 years, and even at the public hearing, we didn't have any, everybody basically said, well, if that's all it was, why didn't we do this before?
well, they had a lot more properties too.
Oh, yeah, yeah, but I mean, it was just, it was low and they were happy with it, so.
And one of the questions that came out of a conference call with the Chain of Lakes Board was the concern about zebra mussels that are known to be in Crooked Lake or in the Watson Drain getting into the watershed, that you're moving water northward into Delton Drain, Chain of Lakes, Long Lake. So is that an issue? Is that not an issue? How do we address those concerns?
It's been addressed in our permit for basically for the pumping and connection of it, but essentially, we have 3 different points where we have screens set up. And it's kind of like a bunch of different furnace filters, just with different sizes, all the way down to the size you can't even see through with your eye looking at it. It's the last size. They need to be cleaned off, regularly maintained, but that's what keeps invasive species as far as like plants, because there's a lot of Eurasian milfoil. Luckily or unluckily, all these lakes have almost identical vegetation
Yep.
invasives in through there. Long Lake and Cloverdale, they have public access to those lakes too as well, and with the zebra mussels being so close, that's something the DNR takes into consideration too. Ducks can pass it just as easy going from one lake to another, for example. As zebra mussels, or humans can, on boats and whatnot. So they take that into account, but we have screens set up at each intake pump location, and then at the outfall too as well. So we have screened intakes. And then the other thing is we have a huge buffer between there as we go through that Delton Marsh. And zebra mussels need to have a water column. Basically, they can't live in just 6 inches of water, for example, in a marsh or in a wetland. They need open water column 3.5, 4 feet deep for several acres in order to survive. So it goes through that Delton Marsh, and it may take 2-3 days of water to get through that marsh all the way through there. We actually pump up onto the ground, and it goes on the ground for 600-700 feet before it gets into the marsh. And that's another point where we call fallout, where it could happen. So we have a bunch of different points where the water builds up and then has to kind of crest the weir and then goes down. And that area where it has to crest, it'll fall out in there. So we have several locations in where we discharge it onto the land too. We have multiple points where we identified where we're trying to minimize the chance that it could move north, basically.
Okay.
So, and that's what they take into account. That's probably one of the biggest items to take into account in the permit for the state. Is that, we had to do vegetation and species analysis for the aquatic species in there, and so we identified all that and said this is the issue. And they're worried about zebra mussels, but they're worried about the unknown. Is part of it too. What is the next thing coming down the list? They don't know. That's what they get.
Okay, and the timeline for capital improvements, providing the permit gets approved, is you'd like to start doing the improvements to the drain district with Long Lake Outlet, Cloverdale Lake Outlet, sometime in late April or early May.
Yeah, when we put in our permit to start pumping May 1st. It's just our window that we have when we can. But we need to have the infrastructure in place before we can start pumping it. So those 3 outlets, different discharge locations between the lakes. We have to have that stuff built, and then we can start pumping. So,
Okay. And
that's all beginning of April before we can start that.
will there be notice? I don't know, at one point we were talking about an informal hearing for those 2 lake basins. I know you said that when it becomes a court action, they'll be noticed 3 times, so that's good news. But both lake associations want to implement some communication with their members prior to the bridge being pulled out. As you and I have talked about, Jim, there's 10 houses on North Shore Drive that need access to get in and out to work, so there's a few challenges, logistics to work through. So we just want to be sure that there's some really good communication with that before anything starts.
And then, in between now and then, the DEQ's working on putting together their public hearing for this project, so everybody's invited to that too. They will all get noticed.
Public hearing will be more for the entire project, not necessarily the lake levels though.
It'll end up being the people on the lakes it's all the riparians on Cloverdale, Chain.
Will they be doing Chain of Lakes and Long Lake separate from
No.
Watson Drain?
Yes.
No,
No?
the Watson Drain public hearing will all be one.
Okay.
I think he's asking about the public hearing. Is it gonna
Yeah, for the-
include
for the-
everybody in both districts?
The
talking about
people that
the-
are impacted are the riparian, lake, the landowners on both those lakes.
Yeah. So the lake level is the assessment districts for those two lakes. But what about the big project where the capital improvements are being paid for out of the Watson Drain, or the permit?
Right,
The DEQ or Eagle's gonna run a public hearing.
right. And they run that on any that, from our work that we have in a permit, anybody that is, impacted landowner to that. So it'd be anybody on those two lakes.
Cloverdale and Long Lake?
Yep.
What about,
Then the Delton Marsh, there's a couple properties like Delton Marsh and like where we run our hose up from our basin that we constructed. But those are the only people that are noticed as far as.
Crooked Lake, Pleasant Lake?
They are not noticed as far as the public hearing for they're not an impacted property owner where we're proposing to do work on their property.
Okay.
Just the way that the noticing gets done for the state's public hearing process. I mean, anyone can come, it's a public meeting. They'll
Okay.
get posted and throughout there.
So they're gonna be noticed primarily on Chain of Lakes and Long Lake for the capital improvement projects that are part of the Watson Drain improvements. Is that where we're off the track but on the track? Okay.
yeah, the Cloverdale, Chain of Lakes, and Long Lake they'll be invited to that public meeting. We had a public input from taking water out of Crooked Lake last year that went into our Darrell Jones's retention pond. So I don't believe those people will be noticed. And then the emergency pumping over there, they don't have a separate public hearing for that.
Okay.
I mean, that'll be part of the permit. Anybody, I mean, it's online, it's on My Waters, some really good reading. It's only, 512 pages long, so, some interesting stuff. Actually, it is really good stuff.
And back to the lake levels, those assessments, probably 2022 winter taxes? Take a year to figure all that out?
Yeah, I
It
don't.
probably wouldn't hit this year.
It probably would be 2021, winter of 2021.
Yep.
Because knock on whatever, we should have the public hearing done sometime this summer.
Yeah, I would think, it'll be on the winter tax bill next year.
Okay.
So due, whatever, February 22. So,
Okay.
2022, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you could pay it in December of 2021.
Okay. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. I think that answers my questions and most of the questions that we had talked about, especially as far as invasives and how that's being handled on there, so.
Did ask about the people on the Long Lake outlet. Brian said what we do before we tear the bridge out is put a temporary crossing in so then people can, or we reach out to people and say, hey, would you rather just stage your cars down at the end of the thing? But Brian said the build will be, they can put a couple culverts in with basically geotextile fabric underneath, set the culverts, cover them with stone or whatever, and then that way you got a place to traverse, take the crossing out, replace that, go back, pick out everything you did here, and we're done. Sounds simple. He makes it sound simple.
Well, if we talk in terms of how long it's gonna take, if it's a 2-day project versus a week-long project, we don't wanna create any more expense than we have to, so,
Why Brian said we can reach out to them people, maybe they want us to go down there and, drive back and forth. If we can save money by doing that and just tear it out and replace it. But you also got emergency vehicles that may have to be able to get in and out, so.
So we can't block emergency vehicle access, so that's why we have to, so it's a 2-day project.
okay, I'm sure we'll have more questions. I'm good.
Anyone else? Hearing no further comments, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 29, 20-09, resolution to initiate lake level project for Cloverdale Lake, Wilkinson Lake, Jones Lake, and Mud Lake. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item is approved. Next before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 20-10, resolution to initiate lake level project for Long Lake. Any questions?
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Jackson, second by
Yeah,
Smelker. Floor is yours.
One clarification on the lake levels. Last year, Cloverdale Lake, from the highest it was, we took that down 18 inches. That's the point at which the channels start causing trouble. But at 10 inches down, we don't have any flooding, so that 8 inches is kind of the target. Long Lake, from what I was doing once a week, that went down a total of 4.5 inches from the highest to the lowest. So we got a pretty good window on that lake too, so.
And that was with pumping double the volume normally coming in from Cloverdale Lake.
Yeah, by adding, what we did was we pumped at a rate that theoretically that 10-inch pipe should have taken if it was working perfectly. So, yeah, we added, from Cloverdale in, it was about 1,200 gallon a minute coming in total, including the, the volume that the pipe was still conducting.
Not that much.
No, not consider that big an area.
Yeah, two questions just to follow up on the previous conversation. When you put in that inlet, Cloverdale outlet, inlet for Long Lake, where is that going to go at?
The control structure will be out, actually, you'll be able to control the elevation out near the road, actually. So the pipe will go underground, and it's basically a couple feet below the water surface out there. That pipe will run to a control structure that's on land where we can access it, and it's got gates basically that you can lift or go down in there to control the elevation, essentially. That'll be the controlling mark. But when we get a legal lake level, then we usually set a lock-in on it so no one can open it and tamper with it. But that controls the lake level right there.
So the permanent or the control structure will actually be closer to Guernsey Lake Road?
Yep.
Okay.
And basically, we're following where the 10-inch tile is right now. We looked at, Brian and I looked at going at the old stream bed between 43 and that house, but we never did figure out who owned that, so we couldn't get an easement down through there. So, well, we got this easement, we're safe to do it, it's in ground, might as well go that way.
It's, what, 762 feet of pipe or something like that?
I don't think it's that much. When they did it, back when Dave Reynolds did it in 92, they had it quite a ways out from that fence. We know this because we found pieces of after that, when it got dry, somebody burned off that prairie grass and burned up about 200 feet of the pipe. It was plastic pipe, and you see pieces of it floating there. And when we did some research, we found out that they'd actually conducted it out into the lake quite a ways further than we thought, so.
Okay. So it's not quite as,
I know that sounds terrible, but that's,
nope, that was the question, where that structure was going to go. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 20-10, resolution to initiate lake level project for Long Lake. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item is approved.
thank you.
thank you.
We are a few minutes ahead of schedule. How about we take a 5-minute break?